From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey, all, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas at Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I have my good friend Dan Knauss joining me, a fellow Canadian, and we talk all things WordPress security, SolidWP, WordPress, and more. Grab a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. This podcast is sponsored by Stunning Digital Marketing, the agency that can help protect your WordPress website today. Go to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and see what we can do to help you protect your business investment. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And today I'm here with my guest, Dan Knauss. And Dan's kind of all over the WordPress space. He works with Stellar WP, works with Post Status, and a longtime community member. How are you today, Dan?
Good.
And it's always good to have a fellow Canadian on the show.
Well, yeah, I'm still a U.S. citizen, but I might end up with both. I'm eligible, so I might stay.
And you do live in Edmonton, so I think you're staying for a while, aren't you?
Yeah, it's been about 8 years now. Yeah,
give or take. Of all places, Edmonton, but better there than winter. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, Winnipeg's got a nice downtown and some old buildings and things I like, but yeah, it's cold.
Yeah. Well, we were kind of talking beforehand, and one of the things I always like, and I know you've been in the space for a long time, is to ask people how they got into WordPress and what's the WordPress origin stories. Do you want to kind of share a little bit about how you found this wonderful community of ours?
Yeah, that goes back a long way. When WordPress was getting started, I was just peripherally aware of it because it was just a little project initially. I remember when B2 was available, I think in cPanel back then. I started like a lot of people my age, I guess, just learning early HTML and then CSS and some JavaScript and doing a lot of front end stuff in the 90s and really very early. And then when movable type was like the first, there was Blogger but movable type was like the first, you can install this and hack away on it. And then like a lot of people, they kind of bungled their licensing and a lot of people went to WordPress. It was attractive at the right moment. But I actually spent a lot of years in Joomla, and we have a ton of Joomla people who have drifted in or done both all along. I probably started using WordPress to build stuff for other people 2004 to 6, but I was doing most of my main work on other open source systems, especially Joomla, and then it reached a point where WordPress was the clearly superior choice for doing especially client work on. I ended up doing more and more work with it for my own clients and myself. And it was interesting to come in from a different community. I also did more with Drupal back then. And I feel like I kind of sidled in slowly. I was, because I was kind of on the edge and on the outside of WordPress community, and I guess it's really formative years, and kind of jumped in more exclusively after 2010, 12, thereabouts.
I took one look at Drupal and said, "This is not for me. I'm done." And you can appreciate that it's more
Yeah,
Drupal, big enterprise product. And
it's a totally different culture. And where I lived then, Milwaukee had a really strong Drupal community. There was bar camps, and it led into heavy Drupal stuff. And then Vic Drover, who's now heavily WordPress, he had an early. He had started with a forked plugin. He kind of started a family business, Joomla extensions, and organized a meetup locally, and I met him that way. So I kind of had friends doing things in a couple different platforms, open source and local conferences, and that was really nice. And they each had we kind of rib each other about stuff, but the different cultures around different platforms offer a lot of insight into how, your one way is not necessarily the only way or the best way, or they're all quite fascinating how they develop.
no, I would agree with that. Even the WordPress way, one of the things we always talk about in the community is WordPress will let you do it a multitude of ways, and there's no right way or the wrong way. It's whatever you're comfortable with, right? And
It's hard to actually believe that in practice. I think we all, and that's kind of good. The frictions kind of come up because there are better and worse ways to do things. But
no, but it's true. So yeah, so
yeah.
you wear a number of hats. So let's jump into one. Is you're heavily involved doing work with the post status community, and what are you doing
Well, I
with
used
post?
to. Yeah, I still hang out, and it's a great place to meet and mingle, and old and new friends on post status Slack. But yeah, I was editing that for a long time. Yep, and at Stellar WP, really kind of focused on iThemes as it becomes Solid WP, and a rebrand we're doing in the open.
So what is the timing for that rebrand? Do you have any sense of it? And
Well, it's
why
in motion.
why the
Yeah,
why the rebrand? I have to ask.
sure. Yeah, well, iThemes is one of the original early commercial WordPress brands in the space, and had a lot of really notable people early in their careers working there. Some, many who are still involved, but the themes, the little very very Apple first decade of the century kind of feel to it, and it was focused on theme products initially, and some of the early builder themes, and that part of it's being sunsetted, and we're part of the pivot and the shift to the brand around Solid WP, is that we're emphasizing the suite of three that come together: Solid Suite, Solid Security, Central, and let's see, other backups.
Back.
And yeah, Backup Buddy becomes Solid Backups, and their integration all together. Central is the SaaS that lets you operate potentially many sites running these and other products. And then we've got Solid Academy too. Don't want to leave Nathan Ingram out, who's also goes back about the same as me. I always feel good when there are other people who are about as old and doing things in the 90s, and have a nice memory of a lot of different things in the WordPress space. So he's continuing what from iThemes training to what will be Academy.
Yeah, that's
Academy.
really well done. And it makes sense actually to be doing it. I think at this point in time, I think iThemes is no longer a theme company. More and more I think about it, the focus has kind of been the security side of the business, which I spend a lot of time in. I'm both a what's now, I think, security, but to be solid security.
Whoops, it froze.
One of our mutual friends, Corey Miller, was the original founder of iThings. So, he's been in the space and also involved in post status. So there's a lot of reasons for change. And I think the hardest part with the rebrand is, what do you do with brand recognition? Like, think if Coke rebranded and remember all the new taste and the Coke Classic fight and where all that went back in the day. Do you have any concerns about losing people to rebrand?
I haven't heard anyone really express that. It's not something I've thought as a concern, because our oldest and biggest fans are pretty looped in, and Nathan with the Academy is kind of a community hub for that, and I've been able to kind of hook into those relationships and find out who. I think they're following along. It's been an ongoing process. So we're rebranding in public and in the open. So I think the chances of the people who are more distantly following maybe won't pick up on it the first couple times, but it should be hard to miss. And I remember, I can't think of what example it was, but I've had plugins, one day you do an update and then boom, maybe something acquired by Automotive or something, but and then you have a rather different user experience on the back end. And we're actually walking our users through that now. Timothy Jacobs, our awesome developer for security, long time, has been doing live sessions and walkthroughs with that. So I think anyone who's paying halfway attention is going to catch what's coming and know all about it. And we've got building out a new customer success team, and I think I like to talk to our support people and connect the devs and marketing and support, and kind of really understand how it's working, how people are using the products, and who they are, and chit-chatting with them sometimes. And Twitter, unfortunately, that's probably gonna change at some point. Not that it's Twitter in WordPress is pretty awesome. I love doing it at post status, and too, it's a niche that, for all the things that can happen, it's a community in there, and it's served well over the years, but it's too bad. But it is super when you can be in close touch with listening to and knowing your people around a product and brand. And so I don't think anyone's going to be too surprised, but there's always some, and we'll be ready for that. It's mostly that kind of whole SEO thing that you got to watch out about. And, we're all concerned with site migration stuff and the whole fun content side of older content. And, you can't just go, you can just search replace a bunch of stuff, but the whole context has changed. You've got to respect some of the older content and bring it into a new place and situate that. And it's always interesting when you've got a decade or more of history on the web to preserve in some ways and keep using without confusing people.
So true. And one of the biggest things you guys have done is on the security side is you now have an alliance with PatchStack, which I think is pretty exciting. They're kind of a leader in our space to do with security. And how do you feel about that alliance or that collaboration?
Yeah, that's really great to be able to do. We really admire PatchStack and what they've done, and really changing the security space and really have ambitions for open source broadly, not just WordPress, but we sure need them in WordPress. Right now in solid security, iTheme security still at this point, we have integrated with them for vulnerability detection, and when you do when you get your updates there, they're providing that, and you click through and getting that kind of public information about vulnerabilities, and that's going to become a stronger integration in the product with using their virtual patching within a firewall we're bringing into. There is kind of technically a kind of firewalling going on with our own brute force protection network, and the way that the plugin picks off attack trends in bad logins and stuff that looks brute force, like a brute force attack. But that's getting beefed up into full firewall with PatchDeck's virtual patching, and yeah, really just having them as people to talk to, which I enjoyed doing a lot at and still do in the security channel at Post Status and around. They just provide a lot of insight, and their networks and their researchers are highly educational to people to learn from.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's been a rough year in the security space. We're seeing more and more SaaS companies get hit. We're seeing more and more retailers. The latest bad one in Canada, as you probably know, was Petro Canada, the gas company, and Suncor, their parent company, got hit. We saw it with Chapters book chain. Their website was down for like a month and a half, believe it or not. It just goes on and goes on and goes on. And by the way, don't get caught with the information with CRA in Canada, because they've been hacked more times than I can count, frankly. So it's a tough place to be. And I think one of the biggest things people can do is have a good strategy. My platform of choice for my clients is PatchDeck and iTheme / Solid Security, combined. That's kind of where I am right now. And I've been there for a long time, and I think it's a really good combination. But also make sure you have a backup. And by the way, I hate to say it, test those backups before you need them, not after you need them. Because I just went through this with a client where they say, "Oh, we've got a backup," and the backup was done. So there you go. Right?
Yeah, I've run into that, on sites, and also network backups with older PCs and stuff. But I'm all Mac now. I used to have a real mongrel network of Linux and Mac and Windows stuff. But yeah, wow. I was just having dinner last night with a friend who's not in tech, but she works in a lot of construction and project managing things, auditing projects, and kind of gets risk. And just people know what ransomware is now. Like, I was kind of surprised. It's the first conversation I've had where someone I know is like, "Oh yeah, this colleague or this company, someone very close to me, they had to pay these huge enormous sums." We had a university here that it wasn't ransomware, but they were phished successfully and changed their bank credentials and paid out 100 million Canadian to who knows who, instead of their construction company, Clark Builders, was doing a huge add-on, and no one caught this for a couple of months. The security goes all the way down. Now that kind of targeting leadership, targeting, and in small and medium-sized businesses, that's the trend. And to be doing more sophisticated, personalized attacks, getting at your user accounts. There's a lot of information you can pull out of a seemingly simple small business site, and they're after what they can extort out of you later. U.S. government's getting more interested in his legislation coming down on dealing with open source and security because of some of these things. It's a really interesting time, and I think educating end users to risks, and also how do you reach a point of confidence of, I mean, this is manageable, you can handle this, and we can help you. I don't think that messages of, alarm and fear and are helpful. So we're trying to find that that proper balance. It's tough, and it's a good challenge in open source to be really transparent about bad things. People don't want to do it. It's not in our nature, but it helps.
Yeah, I would agree. Now, one of the things I wanted to touch on in the security space, there was an article that came out about a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was along malware scanners in WordPress. And I know you guys posted a response to it, or a revised version, or whatever you want to call it at the time. And it was, should you run a malware scanner within WordPress? And the crux of the article was no. You should probably be running an external scanner, which is kind of where I sit. Where do you sit personally on that one?
Yeah, that was my article, and really just kind of summarizing and pulling together research done by Calvin Alkan, Snicko, and Thomas Rafe. We watch your websites, who I've gotten to know a lot better since then. He's got some new stuff coming out, kind of detailing how their system works for detecting malware and analyzing it. And Patrick Gallagher, Grid Pane, was involved with that, and also Oliver Sild, CEO PatchStack, provided some verification of their work. That was very interesting to a lot of us. I think Kathy Zant and some other colleagues put that in front of me. So we have ongoing conversations about security, of course, and Kathy's an old pro and has kind of been a great mentor. And if I don't see something, someone likely Kathy will draw my attention to it. So there's a lot to follow in the security space. And what came out, what had really the crux of that all was, particularly Calvin's research, was that, as a lot of us had long suspected, if you're running essentially a kind of virus scanner type of program through a plugin in your WordPress site, it's running within the same PHP process, the same environment that the malware is. So if it's only going to detect, it's not seeing it coming way off. If you have a malware scanner on your network, if your host is providing one, if Cloudflare or some other kind of firewalling solution sees it further out, it doesn't reach your site. But once it's on and it's active on your site and executing its own code, there's really there's no reason why it couldn't check to see if you're using a security plugin, any plugin or any security features, and then start to manipulate them. And what Calvin in particular brought out with his report at Snicko, his security company, was that this is happening. And he gave example, well, let's see, he gave proofs of concept. He didn't reveal specifically how to do this, but he gave the proofs of concept, and others verified that. And then it was others who pointed out that, yeah, we see this happening in the wild. So that's kind of that's an eye opener. And I'm surprised to the extent that people really trust those scanners, or think of them even as a form of security, because I think they're at best a cleanup tool. Someone intelligently came up with a good analogy on Twitter that, why would you build a fence inside your house? You want to put the fence outside the house. Once they're in the house, I don't know, they've got free run of it. So That's the problem with malware scanners that are running out of PHP, running with the application, like with WordPress as a plugin. So we don't have one, never have had one. When I started at working with iTheme security and came to Stellar, some of the early conversations I had, getting my head around the product, because I hadn't used it in a couple of years. I'm pretty familiar with all these different super brands and products. We've gone in, built a lot of things with them at different times, but it moves so quickly, and it's not what you think, what you thought of them a year ago or even 6 months. And catching up with the lead developer there, it's been Timothy's baby for a long time. It's like, this is really interesting. People kick us around for not having a malware scanner, and I haven't used one in like 10 years, since like Tim Thumb ran loose, and which is still an issue that is being dealt with some cool stuff in core dependency chains. Like, what do you do about that when your plugin is fine, but it's using something else that another project someone else is responsible for? I relied on, managed hosting has been awesome. And yeah, our parent company is Liquid Web, and brought Nexus into the fold. I'd been using Nexus for clients almost since they started in Michigan. When I was living across the pond in Milwaukee, it was like one hop. I was like, this is pretty fast, and they know WordPress. I shifted my client due diligence and education and concern for maintaining client sites that wouldn't get hacked and weren't, to things like hosting, and then building the site in a secure and hardened way, where malware scanning is not part of that on the application level.
No, I don't think it should be, Dan. I'll break it down even more simple. We were talking before we went to record. I'm an old-time security guy. I come out of an enterprise environment. And to this day, on a home PC, on a Windows PC, will not find a malware scanning running on my PC for exactly that same philosophy. I'm scanning with inside what potentially could be infected. So if the operating system gets infected, what good does that do me in the long run?
Yeah.
And I've gone to that philosophy. And my brother used to do sales for AVG Canada, corporate sales, and he'd say to me, "You probably haven't run a virus scanner in years." And I said, "Exactly." Like, because there's no, it's the same philosophy, and people don't get that. You're better off to follow best practices than to rely on a false sense of security.
Yeah, and I think that's a good comparison, especially for those of us who remember running things like AVG and McAfee Security and Norton. And I remember back in grad school that you'd go and use like a university computer lab. It was at North Carolina State, and there were just macro viruses infecting everything from Word documents and stuff. And everyone was getting worms and viruses. And I mean, you had to, using a virus scanner was not guaranteeing anything except that it's like taking a pill that you hope, it's like an antibiotic. And that was like, a lot of them were packaged as like injection, like medicine. And that was the concept. We're already ill. And that was because Windows especially was not engineered for security the way it is now. And things have come a long way, not giving root admin access to like user number one, or assuming that the person logged in should be able to do everything. And you'd be surprised on WordPress. Yeah, thinking about user management and policy, and this is something I hope to talk about for a long time down the road and write about with our freelance and agency folks. That's a value-added service that people are going to appreciate more and more and more. to sit down and talk about this particular site we've developed for your business here. Okay, so you got your team, other vendors maybe who might be accessing, how are you going to handle the different levels of access that come in here, and follow that principle of the least privileges, don't need to know basis, and just get them more participating in user policy, user management, and for their own protection, and to understand that. And that goes down all the way to your computers, devices, and at home. And remote work is driving our need to be careful even more.
No kidding. And, in the website world, especially the WordPress world, every site owner I know, after I do a build, says, I want admin rights. And my first question is, why? Why do you want to? And the response is, because I own the site. And I said, and you're on my care plan? I don't think so. And that's just the way that conversation usually goes, because I'm a big fan of giving people access to what they need to do their job, not everything because they can. And that's the wrong way. And I think part of the problem in the WordPress world is most agencies, most sites I look at that are in trouble, there'll be 5 admins on a website. And I'm like, why? No kidding, you're having problems. And we need to get into this where we need to start looking at user roles and saying, what do you need? And we need to educate agencies to say, tell your clients no. Just say no.
Yeah. No password sharing, please. No. Yeah. And that's why I'm really proud that we brought, again, Timothy gets great props and credit for bringing passkeys and passwordless login into iTheme security. It was the first one to do passkeys, and I think that's going to be a big lifesaver. Things will really change, and Google is pushing that now. I think in the next year or two, we'll stop having passwords to a much greater extent than you might imagine right now. And it's not it shift more in the biometrics and things that Apple and Windows have, Microsoft have built into their devices.
But we have to be careful there, and I'll tell you why. Say tomorrow you become incapacitated, and then you've got an iPhone. So we're going to go down this road. And I know there's some listeners that are going to be saying, why are you going down this road? And I've used Face ID to unlock that iPhone, and I'm incapacitated. If you're going to go to all this biometric stuff, you still need a backup way of into that phone, because most people don't know Apple will not unlock a phone just because you're the trustee on a will, or you're the trustee on an estate. I've heard cases where Apple has said, too bad, go away. And that's a problem. Yeah. So we really got to think moving forward. I know I'm sounding morbid, but what do we do if something happens? What do we do if somebody dies and we're all using biometrics? That's a bit of a problem too, Dan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've had my things set up in my Google accounts for a long time, where every once in a while it reminds me it's there, and it's kind of that dead man switch kind of thing. Like if you don't reply to after a while, I forget quite how that works, but it's it's got my oldest daughter and maybe some other people that they'd be able to step in case I was, I don't know if they'd want any of the junk I've got on my digital life, but yeah, I'm sure lots of people need to do that.
I've actually got in my safe a password list that says, in the event that you need to open this envelope, and it's got basically an export out of my password manager that I do every month and update it just in case something happens. And then my phone I'm an Android phone user, so I've got Face ID set up on my phone. But in the Android world, you can set up a PIN as a backup. So I've gone that. What do you think of password managers since we're on this track?
Right. I don't like password managers. I've done a bit of writing about that because it forced itself on us as terrible but terrific news stories when, so many things to learn from when LastPass last year. And then they did all the wrong PR and internal things to destroy trust by covering up, not being full
Days before.
disclosure.
2
Yeah,
days.
that was
Not good.
no, that was bad. So as a company, we quit using LastPass and recommended. I wrote an article about that on the iThemes blog, and I kept updating it because it kept getting worse. That more would come out, and like what they said previously wasn't true, and it was worse and worse and worse. That was a developer who didn't update some software on his local home machine, or his or her. And it was like 2 years out of date, and they got targeted and got into the whole developer side of the whole company, not just LastPass's stuff. So we quit using LastPass at Stellar and shifted. Bitwarden is, I know a lot of people use it. It's the totally open source, run your own server one
I do.
that, yeah, a lot of people might want to go for personally. But as an organization, we're on it's 1Password. 1Password now. And I still avoid using these things because it's funny. Bitwarden, I think you have to pay. They were very slow to introduce sharing features, and that's what you pay for. That seems to be what most people want to use them for. And when you have teams, I wish like there were better for software that you're going to inevitably have multiple people using. There are a lot of ways we could make that more secure, but any kind of password sharing is a login sharing of any kind is just inherently insecure. And yeah, because who knows, I could be copying, writing it down. I don't know what you're doing. If I'm the only one who has my hands on my own password here, it's all on me. I know what's going on, at least. If I'm doing something dumb, like
I
writing
agree
it
with
down, printing it out.
people do dumb stuff when it comes to security all the time. Like, for example, you go get that rental car at the airport. And what's the first thing you do? You take your phone and you join the Bluetooth to rental car. And before you know it, where'd all your contacts sit? In the Apple AirPlay on the rental car, right? Or they walk into that hotel room and they go into the TV. And the first thing they do is they say, I want to watch Netflix. I can't be bothered to connect my laptop. So what do? Log into Netflix on the hotel TV, right? On these things like that. And it's funny, when I travel with a travel router. So that's basically a
Hmm.
router to the Wi-Fi. And then I carry in my bag a Google Chromecast that only connects to that travel router. And I refuse to connect any devices directly to the hotel Wi-Fi. And then I use a VPN for multitude of
Wow.
reasons. I'm
Nice.
I'm anal, but I don't
Yeah.
have problems.
I think that is probably becoming more common. Like 5 or 10 years ago, if even some people would think that's extreme. Do I need to? But hopefully, more accessible consumer products will come about that will help give some of that level of protection on travel. Because it's a perfect place to target people. Um,
And
yeah,
then
and I think
while we're at it, please, folks, and the FBI released a news release earlier this year on a 10-year-old problem. Don't take your smartphone and plug it into that free USB hub on the bus, in the mall, in the hotel, or in the
Yeah.
airport, on the plane, because those have been hacked too. So just don't do it.
Yeah, it's interesting how much trust there is and has been that really it's convenience and laziness. I think if people are asked to stop and think, do you trust this, then it changes the story. I saw are these still exist, these USB devices that get between your device, your phone, and something else. It's like a USB condom, I think someone
Yep, they're still there.
was marketing it as. Boy, yeah, you have no idea what's going to happen if you just plug directly in and yeah. Does that change? We're kind of moving away from the USB technology is changing, but yeah, if you were to, I don't know if there's any hardware level security still on that. You stick a USB-C device in. Does that change anything? Have they?
There are devices out there, but how I get around it is when I travel, because if you're plugged right into power, it doesn't matter, right? If you use a traditional
Mhm.
adapter. So I just carry a portable power bar that's got USB plugs in it in my travel bag. I'm like, forget it. I don't even want to
Right.
go. And that's just, well, and the other reason for doing that is a lot of old hotels don't have power plugs where you actually want them. Like, that's another story altogether. But
Yeah.
it kind of, it's things people need to think about. Like, do
Hmm.
you think, and security is a tough one. I'm reading a book right now called The Art of Deception. Do you know who wrote that book, Dan?
No, that sounds good.
By the legendary hacker Kevin Mitnick. And what it
Okay.
talks is how to hide on the internet. So one of the stories Kevin tells is there was this drug lord in South America, and he was, pretty smart. He had 7 burner phones. There's only one
Hmm.
problem. He made all 7 calls from the same location. So even though he had burner phones, the police
Right.
were still able to triangulate his location on the 7 burner phones. So he might as well have made all those calls on his actual cell phone.
Yeah, yeah. Do you follow Bruce Schneier stuff?
I do, very much so.
Yeah, yeah, he's great. There's so many interesting stories that come up from people like that who work deeply in security, and it really is a way of thinking. It's not just tech stuff. The tech intersects with the physical and the social, and really the psychology and how people interact and what trust is. And yeah, deception is unfortunately probably on the rise, and trust on the wane in many parts of the world today, which complicates things in open source.
Yep, it does. One of the things I would suggest on a WordPress website is taking a product like yours, SolidWP security, and turn 2FA on. Just do it. And do it
Mhm.
when you're done listening to Dan and I, because that will solve probably 50 to 60% of your grief. Like, it's really hard to do that. Now, the other tip is from a guy who just lost his smartphone, so we don't even want to go there. I actually watched a bus. I dropped it and watched a bus run over
Mm.
it a couple.
Oh, God.
Make sure
Ouch.
you take your authenticator app. So if you're using Google Authenticator, it now will back stuff up to the cloud. We know that. If you have a tablet, an iPad or an Android tablet, make sure Authenticator app is on 2 devices, not just one. It comes in
Oh, yeah.
real handy if you have a problem.
Yes. Yeah. It's never going to be easy, but I think passkeys will make it a little easier, and people get a little bit more used to multiple devices. And um, yeah, it's complicated. Even family sharing can be tricky. Yeah. Yeah. It's
I
definitely not going away in our lives.
I have like 4 devices, so I don't, it's really complicated. And that doesn't count my PC in front of me, so make that 5. So it doesn't go away. And I think we just got to be aware there's a lot of bad actors out there. I hate to say it, and they're getting worse.
Right. I always try to think of user experience through like my grandparents when they were alive, because I put together, I somehow got a 286 Intel 286 machine from my mom's dad, running an early like beta Windows or something. It was 3.0, I don't know, but I've spent a lot of time with a lot of different people trying to use different interfaces and things, and that kind of grounds you in the realism of what people are going to do, and what around security, or what they'll put up with. And something like a passwordless login is nice. If you can get comfortable with your 2FA, that's great. I think getting passkeys once they're set up, that's really convenient. And yeah, for WordPress, we have iTheme Security has long had a passwordless login that's essentially like a kind of 2FA, where you put in your email or username, and it sends you a link to the email associated with that account, and then you just click on that as it comes to you, and boom, you're already in. That's really nice for people who, I mean, the pure just password and username stymies a lot of folks. And I've worked with a lot of older clients, and even not older folks who, for whatever reason, their password practice is one where they're writing something down or trying to remember it and forget and go through the recovery thing. And I don't know, it's just, there's so many ways to frustrate yourself still with that. So the passwordless login with just sending you a link is really nice. You don't have to think.
Moving on, WordPress is an exciting time. There's a lot of changes going on. What excites you the most in the WordPress space right now?
Well, funny little things lately. Just the stuff on the top of my mind is pretty small in some ways. I was tweeting last night because I noticed that WordPress.com, which I use for some blogs, has maybe finally standardized a feature that we'll see in Gutenberg at some point for doing footnotes. And I've always struggled with how to, you really need a standard way to do that, because it's they're a kind of paratextual part of the content, but they stand outside it. They're in serious documents or writing, that's where do you put these? How do we standardize these and make them portable? That's never really been there. There's lots of different ways. I've had fun migrations later because we had footnotes and drop caps and things, for typography, and then it was short codes, and you had to somehow deal with this later when that was no longer a viable solution. So I like little things like that, and just as we're continuing the evolution of the site editor, and just, I guess we're calling it all the editor now. The Gutenberg has matured. There's always neat new little things coming out in there, but the big one now is the collaboration stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
It's going to drive hosting plans, I think, because I think what you're going to is the traditional $299 hosting a month plan, and we know what hosts do those type of plans. I'm not calling anybody out, but those cheap resource plans are going to go away because collaboration won't be capable of handling.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure it's a feature that many will want to turn off. I think a lot of hosts have this. I wish they'd tell you. They kind of quietly turn off revisions. You can get a lot of overhead from revision tracking, but you really want to know if you're thinking it's on and it's not. and then you need one. Yeah, it's a failed backup. So yeah, that really makes your hosting, and I that's very close in my mind to security, is performance, because you see how when people are frustrated for how their WordPress site is working, how it's running in performance, they do hacky things or odd things to cut corners, and there can be security implications to that. A nice quickly responsive experience is where you want to be. And yeah, I don't know about cheaper hosting plans on either security or performance
Not good.
anymore, but yeah.
And then
No,
I
apart. Yeah, go ahead.
and then I can't get through a WordPress podcast these days without asking the two-letter question everybody's talking about: AI. And
Oh,
that's a minefield in itself, because I took
yeah.
AI a couple of weeks ago. I was playing around. I built a plugin just for fun using AI to
Hmm.
do some meaningful tasks. And then I looked at the code and said, oh crap, I would never use this. It was an experimental project because the code was security laden. So like, if you're going to use the AI to do stuff, be really careful for what you use it for. It's a tool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, it seems to me that it will amplify problems that we get from just Googling too freely. Um, that's a really interesting thing. I got to do some writing, and like a lot of good long writing. I don't know what I think about it initially. I was going to write some stuff about AI for Cadence and our Stellar blog, and did one interview about it. So I had to come up with some opinions, and playing around with Chat GPT. And I'm reading quite a lot about it. Yeah, I eventually kind of got I think, a pretty long view on it. There's a lot of fast moving stuff in the news, and I kind of ignore all of that. All the, oh, it's, really bad, or,
Yep.
or the most amazing thing ever. I think it takes a lot of work. It's not another mind, but it's sort of kind of like that in some ways. And if you don't switch ears off, if you aren't just like Google for a code snippet, bam, copy paste, that's never been good. And if you're doing that with an AI, like, tell me this, and then trust whatever it says. I've had some pretty good plugin code generated, but I think it's better as a this is where it gets tricky, because people this is a security thinking type of thing too, to limit yourself. Would you just go on the street and ask someone for some kind of random code, and then plug it into your or pick up a USB key and from anyone, and then just it's that kind of thing. The AI isn't trying to hack your site, but it may give you some crappy code that makes it vulnerable. So in really any field, I put in a bunch of medical data. I had some diagnostic medical stuff to see how ChatGPT 4 would handle that, and I blogged about that at length. It was really interesting. For subjects where a lot, you can evaluate and edit appropriately the responses you get. It's great. It's like having an assistant, like a junior, research assistant or something. But if you're using it to give you answers about things you don't know at all, that's where you run into problems. And in between is the learning opportunity. I think if a lot of the times you're asking, so you have kind of pretty good working knowledge, but if you can learn something new, even better. So you kind of have to get your mindset in, I'm having a dialogue here with an intelligent, June, maybe maybe sporadically, they know this field really well in some areas, not others, or you have to fact check everything. If you work very critically with it, it can be a learning tool for you. You can ask creative questions like, have it evaluate existing code or look at 2 different ways to code something, and kind of raise your confidence level that you understand what you're asking for and you understand what you're getting back. I've done very little with coding and more like learning, as I was learning more advanced stuff with spreadsheets and then just completely different fields. I liked doing things like translation and trying to get ChatGPT to do poetry, which I don't think it's ever going to be good at. But if you can do humorous stuff, but yeah.
It doesn't do it well. Hey, Dan, it's been an amazing
Mhm.
conversation. Thanks for joining and sharing your wealth of knowledge. If somebody wants to get a hold of you to chat, iTheme, Stellar, or WordPress, how's the best way?
Well, I'm still at Dan_Knauss, Knauss, at Twitter for the time being. And
Until you leave.
that's as good a way. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. Have a great day. Bye for now.
All right. Thank you.
This show is brought to you by StunningDigitalMarketing.com, your Toronto leader in digital marketing services. Not only do we protect your WordPress website, we can help you with your site, provide social media management for your business, or even do one-on-one consulting. To find out more, go to StunningDigitalMarketing.com. A very special thank you to Dan for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. Hey everybody, Rob here again. Thanks for listening to the SDM Show. It's such a pleasure to have you every week. If you want more on our agency website, go to StunningDigitalMarketing.com. We are your WordPress security experts. We'd be glad to help you out. If you want to learn more about me, Rob Cairns, go to meetrobcairns.online. From there, you can find links to everything I do on the web, as well as book time with me. So feel free. If you want to make comments about this podcast or know a guest possibly suitable for the podcast, please email us at podcast@stunningdigitalmarketing.com, or conversely, you can go to X, formerly known as Twitter, and tweet at me at Rob Cairns. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much, and I love you. Please join us next week for another interesting podcast, and have a great week, everybody. Bye for now.